All right. Welcome back. Episode 10 of Ask Coach Nate. I'm very excited. 10 episodes. It's a big milestone. I did get my hair cut. Very excited about that too. What do you think, Nate?
That's good.
Yeah, we're good. So in this episode, we're going to address the question, should you train like a pro? And we'll get our former pro to weigh in. So Nate, let's talk about it. Like, should amateur athletes, people who are watching this video, should they adopt some of the methods that pros do? Like let's go into it. Like, is that something that is even reasonable or smart for amateur athletes?
I mean, I think in the big picture, clearly, we're all humans and are like 99.9% genetically the same. The way in which our genes get turned on and off may be a little bit different, but like we all operate in the same principles. We're all going to benefit in a similar way from doing, endurance training and certain types of workouts. And we'll all get fitter from like training more and training harder and recovering better. But so like in principle, like the general ideas behind our training might be very similar. But if you're working 40 or 50 hours a week and you have kids and you can sleep only 7 hours a night and you're trying to be, fit for fun, or you're racing and even if you're like a Cat 1 and maybe you're like a Masters national champion, like you still have constraints and an inability to sacrifice like your entire, sacrifice all other possible priorities in favor of just training as much as you possibly like need to. And so I think that the actual like day-to-day operations of what a pro's life look like is just not practical or possible for 99% of people out there. But the principles with which they train, I think, are something that we can learn from and can model into our own training. But I don't think one thing that I would draw a distinction is that we don't want to just scale everything. We want to take the principles with which they train and apply them to the modified like experience of training that we have. So a lot of times people take like the exact details of what they do and it's like, oh, I'll just do like half that because I'm training 10 hours a week instead of 20 hours a week. And it's like, that doesn't exactly work or scale.
Right.
And that's one thing I really kind of have an issue with sometimes when people in like the fitness and endurance training space talk about like, oh, like pros do this, so you should do it. Like pros do 90% of their work at a low intensity and 10% of their work at a high intensity, or like 20%, let's say. But it's like, if pros are training 30 hours a week, 20% of their time at intensity is like as much time as some people are training all week. And it doesn't exactly scale in like a linear fashion.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, like, I think you've summarized, or the biggest difference that's very obvious is time, right? Pros have a lot more time, like they do it 40 hours a week, where most people have to go to work or they have family responsibilities or whatever it is, right? So that's the biggest difference. I mean, you have talked a lot about amateurs adopting things that pros do to try to mimic them and see if that's something they should put into their training. And I know, like, I think maybe one of the principles would be that a lot of things that pros do is it's the outcome of being a pro is why they do that, not the reverse. They don't do that to be a pro, right? Why don't you elaborate on that? We talked about it with like running form, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like running is a perfect example. Like if you look at all the elite marathon runners, like many of them have a certain type of foot strike and stride length and contact time on the ground. But it's like, that works for them because they weigh 120, 130 pounds. They're 5'6". They run a 430 or 440 pace, which most people, like if you look at the running form of like when the 2 hour marathon was broken and people were just amazed at the pace set by Eliud Kipchoge, like there was a whole slew of videos online of people trying to maintain that pace for as long as they could. And so usually it's for like a minute or two. And then, some like retired pros can maybe do it for like a mile or two. But it's like the form with which they're running is like extremely different because they weigh 150, 180 pounds and their marathon pace would be like 6 or 7 or 8 minutes. And it's like doing anything even resembling what Kipchoge does in training or in racing is not going to be the same thing. And like, even if somebody is trying to run a marathon, but they're doing it in 3 hours because that's their physical capacity, even if they're like devoting their entire life outside of work to like qualifying for Boston, for example, like the training that they're doing is not going to be the same as an elite marathoner that's training 140 miles a week. Like they're training, 50 miles a week, and their long run makes up almost half of their total volume. And it's very different than somebody that does 2 a days, 5 days a week. Likewise for like cyclists, the amount of time they spend on the bike, the amount of time they spend at intensity, the fact that they might modulate their diet and macronutrient intake to try to maximize certain outcomes in their training are not going to be very effective. So like the recent interest in reducing carbohydrate intake, for example, can be a good strategy for enhancing endurance and demanding your body burn more fat. But that only really is very effective if you're already pretty fit and you're looking to make gains that you can't get otherwise from just training more or training more intensely. And training intensely requires that you have carbohydrate intake. So it's like pros that are training 30 hours a week can do both because they're doing like 3 or 4 rides that are 6 hours long each week. So they can do intensity, but by the end of the ride they and have plenty of carbohydrate, but by the end of the ride they're glycogen depleted. So it's like doing 3 6-hour rides each week doesn't scale to doing 3 2-hour rides each week because you're training 8 hours a week instead of 30.
Yeah. So I mean, I think a lot of it, stems from time, right? They have so much more time that they can focus on all these other things, cross training, right? Lifestyle,
Sleeping
rest,
better because
right? Than what you do. And then I mean, why don't you talk a little bit more about like the mindset, right? Like pros train long term, like that's their livelihood.
yeah, I mean, for most of us, it's like a diversion and it's something that is like a hobby of some sort where it's like something that we might be very passionate about, but it's like a part of a larger complex of activities that we do in our lives. Like for them, like they might do other things, but everything is subsidiary to their effort to be a successful athlete. And so they have to be completely devoted to it for as long as they need to be or can be, So it's like for 15 years, like Contador was just a cyclist, and anything that would take away from that was just something that he wouldn't engage in. Whereas like even for somebody that's a very serious amateur athlete, like you have to take care of your kids, you have to take care of your house, like you don't have a mechanic that takes care of your bike and like a chef that prepares food for you whenever you're on the road. And like you have to do, like pros are able to plan their entire life around cycling because that's the only thing that really matters to them, because that's both their passion but it's also their vocation. And they can like use that to sleep more and get better recovery, like I said. But we just have to be aware of like what it is that we're trying to get out of cycling or sports, and have that be like in the context of our life as a whole.
What do you think is the number one like takeaway people can learn from how pros train? And of course, like what's the reverse? Like, what do you think is the biggest mistake that people take away or try to adopt from what pros do?
I mean, I think that looking at what pros do, like they train as much as they can. They train very hard, but they're very focused about it, and they don't just arbitrarily like go hard up some climb just because they like it. They don't chase after people. Like if a pro is out doing a recovery ride and somebody passes them, they're like, "Oh, okay, great, somebody just passed me." Like it doesn't even register. Or if they're doing an interval and somebody like latches onto their wheel, like they're not going to change their pace just because somebody else is around them. Like you have to be indistractable if you're focused on doing a good job as an athlete at whatever level you're at. And I feel like that's one of the biggest errors that everyday athletes make, is that they just like let their feeling dictate like how hard they go that ride. They let other people on the road impact how they're going to pace their riding from moment to moment. And they're not as focused as they can be if they want to get good fitness results out of it. And then I think that also the emphasis on having a general lifestyle that is conducive to like wellness and health and good recovery is something that like when they're not training, pros are often focused on like relaxing, sleeping 9 or 10 hours a night, having a good diet. And I think that a lot of times in our culture, like people are often like busy, they're just cramming their training in, they eat a protein bar, they're sleeping 6 hours a night, they're not sleeping the same hours all the time. And even small things like spending too much time on social media and like getting stressed out about events in the world, or getting infuriated because like some random person that you know that isn't even your friend like posted something that you find politically offensive, like that takes a toll on your attention, and it takes a toll on your stress levels in a way that isn't going to help you sleep well. It's not going to help you recover well. So I feel like the emphasis on like training as much as you can in a way that is practical for you and your schedule, recovering as well as you can, and having as much like wellness and low stress existence as you can is worthwhile. So even just like taking little breaks from your phone and having like a nighttime routine that sets you up to sleep well, I think are some of the things that people could do that pros do, but just in a much like smaller kind of bite-sized version that could help any random person that's an aspiring athlete and wants to like set a PR and I don't know on a climb that near them or in the 10K. As far as like what pro athletes do that we shouldn't do, it's like if your whole life is about being Chris Froome and winning the tour, like it's fine if you're not eating enough and you are like wrecking your body in the long term, or you're like not fit to do other things. But I think most people will do well to like put sport in its rightful place in their life and just be clear about what their goals are. Like it's fine if you want to make sacrifices for something that's important to you, but also like I don't know, like you want to make sure that you're authentic to what is valuable to you. So it's like, I value my relationships and like, I'll, shorten my rides if it means I'm going to hang out with my partner more or something like that. Whereas if I was a professional athlete, I would just like, I couldn't do that, like I would have to be an athlete first. Um,
Yeah, I think those are some good points, right? Because like at work, I have to go to work and I have to do my job, and if I have to stay late or do something, like I have to do it, and that's like the well understood value prop with my family and my friends, right? Just like if you're a pro athlete, you got to do what you got to do. And my wife definitely gives me a hard time when I don't want to eat a Christmas dinner or something because I'm worried about my amateur athletic performance. And I appreciate that perspective, right? That there's a point where making those sacrifices, like it just doesn't make sense. Like she always laughs at me. She's like, "You're never going to be pro. Like, why are you doing this?" And like and I appreciate it, right? Like she appreciates my dedication, but like yeah, there should be limits, right? If you're not getting paid for it, like why ride 40 hours a week? I think the way to summarize it is just like, look, it's good to spend the majority of your time focused on what you love and leading a healthy lifestyle. All right, why don't we slip gears in this? So we'll go.
yeah.
So I think the last one. So there's another point that me and you talked about. The difference between amateurs and pros is genetics, right? I mean, they are perhaps different.
Yeah, I mean, clearly that manifests in like just every metric that you could ever monitor. Like if you look at people's VO2 max, if you look at people how people respond to training, if you look at like a more injury prone activity like running, like it makes a huge difference if your bone structure is just a little bit different. Like your feet are a little bit smaller, your frame is a little bit narrower, you weigh a little bit less because your overall bone structure is a little bit smaller and takes you less muscle mass to achieve the same like amount of propulsion, and you can run 120 140-mile weeks and not get injured, whereas some people are going to get injured when they do 40-mile weeks, let alone the fact that like given the same 40-mile running week or the same like 8-hour cycling training week, like if I do 8 hours and if you do 8 hours, even if we're following the same training plan, like we're going to get different results. Or even if like we had somehow like we knew the mind of God and we knew like the exact best training plan for each of us and we both followed it, let's say for years, like we're going to get different results because like I said, like most of us have actually like fundamentally the same genes, but the ways in which they get turned on and off are different. Our dietary choices are different. How we sleep is different. Even just other stuff like how well you handle stress and how that affects your sleep can compound like many times. And so like all of those things, like some people just respond much better to stress, physically, and they get fitter and they get stronger, and they are in this virtuous cycle of like doing training, getting stronger, doing more training, doing harder training, getting stronger at a rate that is even just a little bit different, compounded over multiple years, can mean that you're, a pro with a threshold at 400 watts, or that you're like, a very fit, healthy person with a 260 watt threshold.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting topic that we've talked a lot about, like how much are genetics a part of athletic success? What genetics are they, right? Like, and one of the things I think that me and you always come back to was somehow there's perhaps a genetic predisposition to not get injured, probably in all professional athletes. And it's a very difficult one to measure. Like, what gene is that? But you can see it like in every sport, baseball, football, not just like endurance sports, right? There's some of the, so to be uh, the really famous pros, they don't get injured in the way that other ones do. And there's all kinds of people who come in and are very promising and have a skill and talent and enthusiasm and excitement and they have panache and they're just fantastic, and they get like some horrendous injury or they just can't seem to get off the bench, right? I think you see this with Thibaut Pinot. He
Yeah.
has all of the talent to win a grand tour, but he just seems to somehow be prone to injury. It's not clear why,
Yeah.
right? And then there's other people who race in the pro peloton, like, look at the pros like Chris Froome, Pogacar, Roglic, right? Like these guys are performing at the same level and they just don't seem to get injured. And there's something consistent about it, right? And I firmly believe like there's some genetic component. There's some way that like certain people can do and sustain a certain amount of like whatever it is, athletic, just time spent, and they seem to be fine.
Yeah, it's clearly complex because there's both like structural issues where people have, better bone density, better like stronger connective tissue, and they just like don't get irritated from doing 400-mile weeks. And then they also have a highly adaptive, responsive body that just responds really well to the stress of training. And then some people respond really well to the stress of training, but once they get to a certain fitness level where they are doing like half an hour at 400 watts repeatedly throughout a week, because that's like a good training week, it's just like too much for their body structurally. And I mean, that's like a little bit kind of my experience. Like my body is not built well for running. So no matter what I would do, I can't do enough miles. I can't be efficient enough to be a good runner because like just structurally, like whatever it is that has made my body like the size and shape that it is, like I could be an okay runner, but I can't be a great runner. But cycling is different. And evidently I'm like very responsive to training and can train a lot on the bike and do pretty well. But then like given the fitness that I have cycling, like if I went back and like really hammered at running, like I'd probably, get stress fractures and like break something. So it's like you have to have everything.
Yeah, I mean, like they're clearly with the top runners, they're just performing at a level that other people can't seem to do for whatever reason, right? And the injury part is a big part of it, right? Like you talked about Eliud Kipchoge's like pace. Like I can't even do that pace. Most people can't even do that pace, and he's able to maintain it the entire way, right? And then you have other people like I love Killian Jornet, and somehow that guy is able to just like do these ultra endurance events and just kind of keep going. And like, yeah, he doesn't seem to get injured, right? He's been doing it a long time since he was a young kid, and there's all these factors, but there's something there that like enables him to just keep going in a way that other people don't seem to be able to do.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of suffering involved all the same though. And I feel like if anything, seeing people like that really excel, it's like they're doing what they love and what they're good at. And I feel like that's one thing that I really like on a meta level, I would want to take away from pros and their experience as athletes. Like I remember just recently, I saw some people commenting on Kipchoge coming in like 8th or 9th at the London Marathon, and like they were really appreciative that he would finish and that he wouldn't just like pull out because he was having a bad day, because he's won like every marathon he's done for years, and has the world record, has the fastest time that's not a sanctioned marathon record under the 2 hour mark. And it's like he just wants to be like the best athlete that he can be. He values the competition. He wants to finish strong. It's like Kilian Jornet wants to do like whatever it is that he wants to do with like mountain running and ultra marathon running. And it's like I might not want to do that. I might not be a purist that like appreciates running, but like he's doing like his most artful existence in life, and he's like being the best version of himself that he can be. And it's like, if you're a working stiff that works 9 to 5 and has 2 kids and sleeps 7 hours a night, but you want to be a cyclist, like be the best version of that person that you can be. And I feel like that on a meta level is like what I would hope everyone can do, whether they're a professional athlete or a weekend warrior, and that they like listen to their body and listen to their values and priorities, so that they hopefully have a good balance in their life that is rewarding for them and allows them to be, the best, mom or dad slash, worker slash parent slash like weekend athlete that they can be. Like, if that's what they want to do it, like they can do it as artfully as possible and do it like in their own way, like they're being their own like greatest self, just like Kipchoge is the greatest at what he does. But we can't all be Kipchoge. And that's fine. It's great.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that might be a great way to kind of to close it out, right? That like, hey, like there's big difference between like what amateurs do and professionals do. And it's inspiring. I love to watch it. Everyone loves to watch it and participate, or at least feel like you're part of what's going on. But like what you should do in your own training is probably not what the pros do. You should be doing what is going to be best for you, get the outcome that you want.
Yeah. And like, especially this last year when things have been challenging with COVID and race cancellations, I actually have gotten a lot of inspiration out of many of the athletes that I work with that keep training well, keep getting a lot out of it. They just really love doing it. And it's like most of them currently aren't like trying to set any, huge records, but it's like for them to set a PR on a climb and just be getting the most out of their experience in life and being the best version of themselves. Like I find that really inspiring, just as I find it inspiring to see Kipchoge run under 2 hours in the marathon. Like, that's ridiculous. And I love it. I love all of it. I feel like, if anything, like the desire to excel and be the best version of ourselves is what I think we all appreciate about all effective and successful athletes. And I feel like that's something that we can appreciate about each other and all aspire to in our own ways.
Awesome. Well, hey, episode 10 wrapped up. Please like and subscribe. We've had a lot of subscribers coming in, which is fantastic. And we'll see you all next week.
Bye.